Mr. Wiltberger and,
Okay, just curious.
oh, sure, sure.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
So, not a question, but a comment. There's also going to be a plaque that is going to explain, who Ms. Scott was. That's going to be installed on the side of the building that formerly was Cecilia's. The facade has been retained as part of the Shaw development. That's the name of the condominium building, Shaw. That's there at the corner of Wilberger and T Streets. So it's not going to be a situation where people won't be able to understand what the relevance of the name is.
Thank you, Alex.
And the developer is going to be responsible for installing that.
That's correct.
Any questions from the audience? Okay, we'll make the motion, Mike.
Yeah, I make a motion that the commission support the symbolic name change of Wilbur Street.
And that, and
Sister Cecilia Way.
and friendly amendment, and that we, communicate that to the council of the District of Columbia. I'll second it if you accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, yeah, accept.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great.
On behalf of Ms. Boyd and her husband and Mrs. Scott, we thank you. And we're hoping that you'll be expeditious in getting your correspondence to the
Yes.
council so we
I
can
will do
have
that.
the opening of the signage for her birthday, Mrs. Scott's birthday on June 15th.
June
Okay, very good.
15th. All right,
Okay,
thank you.
I'll be the one, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we have Alex Lopez. There's 3 concerns from the Transportation Advisory Committee.
Okay.
And the commissioners have all been sent these by PDF.
Okay, well,
Let me see.
yeah, we can just pass it down. This is the first item that was recommended to the commission by the Transportation Committee at our meeting last week. This is regarding the intersection. It's a complex intersection, actually a network of 3 intersections, New York Avenue, 5th Street, and Elk Street Northwest. This is right by the Safeway. This item was brought to the TAC by a resident of ANC 6004 who raised the concern that vehicles that are traveling eastbound on New York and turning left onto 5th Street northbound, there's a light at Elk Street that is not positioned very well. If you're turning off New York, a lot of vehicles tend to miss that light and go through the red light, which creates an issue where obviously there's a risk of T-boning there. And in fact, there was a traffic crash just, I think, last week that underscores this point. In discussion of this intersection, the TAC identified 3 issues that we thought could be addressed here. The first being the left turn from New York onto 5th. The second issue being if you're a pedestrian walking south on 5th and trying to get to Safeway, it requires at least 2 light signals to get across L Street, New York, and then the other leg of L Street. And so we would ask the DDOT look at the signal timing to try and make it so that you can make it across to Safeway in 1 signal. And then the third issue is vehicles that are traveling westbound from the south leg of L Street. So if you're coming out of the Safeway parking lot, you're turning onto L Street westbound, and you'd like to get onto New York Avenue westbound, you have to take like a complicated maneuver where you take a right onto 5th and then a quick left onto New York, and that's confusing for a lot of drivers and creates some traffic issues. So that's the third issue we'd like to resolve.
So just to clarify, that also applies if people are making that same trajectory, but actually going to the 500 block of L Street.
So going through New York, yeah, and then turning onto L?
Going, turning left, turning right onto 5th Street, to that same traffic signal, and then making a left onto L Street.
Yeah, I think generally there's some channeling is a problem for those cars that are coming off L, regardless of whether they're going to New York or L. So the TAC recommended a resolution that you've seen. The actual meat of the resolution would be that DDOT should paint a vehicle stop line on 5th Street northbound at the intersection of L. There's currently no stop line, which is one of the reasons why vehicles go through the red light. That DDOT install a stop here on red sign. That the DDOT adjust the positioning of the traffic light controlling 5th Street northbound to improve visibility. So these are all about the left turning from New York. And then regarding the pedestrian crossing, look at signal timing, including a dedicated, signal timing including dedicated left turn phase from New York Avenue eastbound, and study the viability of closing the slip lane from New York Avenue westbound to L Street westbound. So that's all for the turning issue. For the pedestrian issue, we asked the DDOT look at signal timing, and then for the issue of cars turning off L Street South Leg, look at DDOT to assess issues to clarify the turning route that cars are supposed to take off of L Street.
Okay, so this is in my area, and this is one of my constituents that brought forward. The only thing that I'll say is I think it's great that hopefully DDOT will pay attention, but we've gone to DDOT previously, and they actually made the island bigger that's on New York and now wider because of this whole crossing issue. And because New York Avenue is a highway, this is a very tough issue with that light. So they are aware, but I hope this will, help guide them better. Well, this is great. I'm glad my constituents came to your meeting. So I'll make a motion that I move that ANC 6E support the resolution for the traffic safety assessment for the intersection of New York Avenue and 5th Street and L Street, and that we communicate that to DDOT.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Down.
This is the second item recommended from the TAC. This is a sign-on letter regarding traffic safety in North Capitol Street. This letter was originally drafted by a gentleman, Nick Santelli, from the Eckington Civic Association. Nick's concern, and I share his concern, is that in the last 18 months there have been 6 pedestrian fatalities in North Capitol Street. It's a street that we all acknowledge and understand is a dangerous street for all road users, including drivers, pedestrians, and bicyclists. 1 year ago, in January 2019, DDOT and the NOMA bid released the North Capitol Street Needs Assessment, which identified 60 interventions that would improve traffic safety on North Capitol between Massachusetts and our street. After about a year, we've seen multiple traffic fatalities, and DDOT's only implemented a handful of its own recommendations. This is a sign-on letter urging DDOT to implement the recommendations from the North Capitol Street needs assessment, and acknowledging that there is a critical issue with North Capitol here. And the letter has been signed on by a number of civic associations, commercial associations, including the NOMA bid. We're hoping to get, I'm hoping to get the ANC support here. ANC 6C is also reviewing this letter.
Okay, great. So this, Alvin, do you want to do this one, to make a motion?
Yeah. I make a motion that we support this letter for DDOT, for further not study, but to approve it, and we move on forward for the safety of our constituents in the neighborhood.
This is a friendly amendment that we send this letter to DDOT.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, one more, Alex, you gotta make it quick.
All right, last one. So this one is was requested by Chair. This is regarding Mount Vernon Square. This is Mount Vernon Square should be a center point for our community, but it actually acts as an island that's cut off from the rest of the community by some really bad traffic, a lot of gridlock, a lot of dangerous and scary pedestrian crossings. So the TAC, identified that this was that Mount Vernon Square is a big issue, and we're urging, this resolution urges DDOT to take a comprehensive view at resolving the traffic issues and the safety issues at Mount Vernon Square in order to make this more of a community asset rather than a community liability. Specifically, we're asking for a number of things in addition to the study, creating safe pedestrian crossings at every corner of the intersection, installing high visibility crosswalks, building and planning for a connected bicycle network that takes into account the K Street protected bike lane and the K Street Transitway. Expanding the use of traffic control officers to reduce gridlock and keep crosswalks clear. Creating a signalized intersection at 7th and K Street Northwest, and revisiting the alternative traffic flow designs and right-of-way reallocation that were identified in the Mount Vernon Square District project, which was a study from the Office of Planning back in 2010.
Okay, so I wanted to point out, the big thing is this word, 7th Street, Mount Vernon Place, New York Avenue, and K Street. That is a nightmare every second of the day. And so this came out, I mentioned this to Alex Lopez, because last year sometime, the Ward 2 council member and his staff all came to talk about this intersection, blah, 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 and then nothing happened. So I don't know where it stands with whoever's gonna be a Ward 2 council member, but we've gotta take action on our side, so there's two sides, as you know.
Definitely, yeah.
So, and this is Alex Marriott's area. The other side, Alex.
And this was, DDOT had planned to address Mount Vernon Square through the Union Station to Georgetown streetcar line, which has now been iced. So this is kind of a call, this is a good opportunity for us to call for action here.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Something.
100% support this. I was just mentioning to Commissioner Padro, we had a long conversation with former Commissioner Messina about 6th and K, so that's certainly right down the street from this, but I certainly endorse this, and we'll talk a little bit more about 6th and K in the future, but until then, I'd like to make a motion, the ANC 6E, endorse this resolution for a comprehensive traffic safety plan for the Mount Vernon Square and adjacent streets, and that we communicate that to the District Department of Transportation.
Seconded.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Alex Lopez. Okay, so now we've got Alex Padro. Comprehensive plan.
Yes, so the comprehensive plan obviously is a huge document. It's the printed version is a binder about yay thick. I challenge anyone to actually read the entire thing. But if you go through the areas that relate to our jurisdiction, there are a significant number of changes from the 2005 version that have been proposed by a number of entities, many of them by law firms representing landowners in the area, but also individual submissions were also included. One thing that somehow was not addressed is something that is an artifact from the Shaw School Urban Renewal Plan, going back to the 1960s and 1970s. So when 7th Street underwent urban renewal, many of you will know that several garden apartment complexes as well as high-rise buildings were constructed along 7th Street, in many cases on blocks that were decimated by the 1968 riots. And instead of including ground floor retail as part of the redevelopments, which was the traditional and historic type of development that took place there, only housing development took place, with the one exception of United House of Prayers development on the 1100 block of 7th Street, for which we're to be noted for having had the foresight of having to go through the additional hoops to ensure that there was some return of commercial fabric on the ground floor of that one block. So we ended up with what is often referred to as a retail desert, a series of blocks where there's no retail activity, no activation on those block faces. All you have are the housing developments. So fast forward to today, we recognize the mistakes that were made in the past, and on all the new developments that have taken place along 7th Street, ground floor retail has been included. Now, the existing land uses for several of those blocks that were developed during urban renewal still do not have the flexibility for developers to include retail at the point in the future where they may be redeveloped. So there are a series of lower-rise developments along 7th Street, adjacent to the Mumford Square, as well as to the Shaw Howard metro stations that, in the course of the next 10 or 15 years, it may take 15 years before the comprehensive plan is revised again, since it's taken that long since the last revision. If we don't, make a recommendation for flexibility so that those future redevelopments can include ground floor retail, then once again, it's going to be an additional burden for developers to be able to try to include the kinds of amenities that not only generate jobs for neighborhood residents, but also bring additional opportunities for folks in the community to be able to spend their money in the neighborhood, as well as to attract folks to the neighborhood. So the two sentences that I proposed, would address the flexibility. Doesn't require any redevelopment to include ground floor retail. It allows the flexibility for it to be included, because as many of you know, the comprehensive plan is a document that is supposed to be adhered to so that any changes that are made during rezoning and planned unit developments are not inconsistent with the plan. So if someone were to say that they wanted to put ground floor retail, on one of these blocks that might be redeveloped, that currently does not have that flexibility, in the language of the plan, it would not be consistent with the plan and potentially could be
Okay, so
rejected.
what are the
So
two
that's the whole
sentences?
point. Yep, so.
Give me the two sentences, we're all for it, we're with you,
Yeah,
Alex.
so,
What are the two sentences?
did you print out
I
those?
didn't print it out.
Can you send me an email? Just send it to
Well,
somebody.
actually, I do have a question. I want to know, what are the exact streets and what's there now?
So
The
it's-
low-rise affordable housing?
So it's only 7th Street that we're talking about.
Right.
And on some blocks, you've got institutional buildings, like Howard University's building that we were going to talk about at
Yeah,
next
next
month's meeting. Or you have low-rise housing, like Washington Apartments.
Right.
Some United House of Prayers, developments
Sure.
along 7th Street.
Would, and
And I can pull up the line.
Sure, yeah. Would anybody that's currently there, any property owner there, have a problem with that kind of change in the comprehensive plan?
No, because it just gives them flexibility.
No, I understand
There's-
that.
It's not a requirement.
No,
It's no
I
requirement.
totally understand that. I'm just saying, like, for instance, if I didn't want that change, I obviously wouldn't want that flexibility. My question is just, what's the other side? Is there another side? Is there anybody that would be opposed? Frank, do
I'm
you
not
know?
opposed to the language because it's,
We haven't heard the
they're not
language, what's the
forcing.
language?
I just, with the flexibility.
Yeah, the flexibility, it gives the developer the option to
Right.
add a commercial on the bottom floor. It's not a mandate, from
Right.
what I'm understanding from my reading.
Do you think the
I don't
United House
think
of
we
Prayer would
would
have
be
any
against
issue
it.
with the
I
flexibility?
don't think so.
Okay.
Not based on what my understanding is at the present time.
All right, that's
So
good enough for me.
the proposed language is, the comprehensive plan should facilitate new market rate and mixed income housing and retail development, maximizing density within the vicinity of the Shaw Howard University and Mumford Square metro stations and the 7th Street corridor is a continued priority to support the development of additional housing and commercial amenities in Shaw.
That
Those are the
sounds
two
great.
sentences.
So it's not forcing the current developer to tear
exactly.
down.
Yeah,
the
it's
property.
Give them an
opening,
option.
it's opening the door.
If it did.
That's all it
Right,
is.
right, yeah, no, I
Okay.
understand.
Does anyone have any problems with this?
No,
No.
no.
And the
Okay.
zoning committee recommended that.
Okay, great. So you want to make a
Yep,
motion?
so I move that ANC 6E submit the proposed comments on the comprehensive plan to the office plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
These are due by the 14th, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, any old business?
Just one issue that's been brought to my attention by the librarian here. Our June and November meetings
Yes.
are actually going to conflict with elections.
Correct.
So if we want to hold our meetings in this facility, we would have to change the date, or we would need to choose a different location to hold them.
So I think we can talk about that offline.
Okay,
So,
I just
yeah,
wanted
we'll
to
talk about
raise
that.
the issue.
Yep,
We don't
he
require
talked
that.
to me today.
We don't require to have 9 meetings per year. We only have 11 at the present time, so we wouldn't be against
Okay.
procedure.
All right, looks, any, for the minutes, okay, I move that ANC 6E approve the minutes for January 7th, 2020. Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have the treasurer's report?
We do not, I apologize, that's my fault. I left the Wells Fargo sheet on my desk with my wallet, which is why Kevin had to graciously give me $15 to pay for my cab. My apologies to everyone in here, I will have that ready for our next meeting.
Okay, so we do have some concerns, and I forwarded you this email.
Yep, yeah,
So our
I saw 'em.
concerns are that we received, Alex and I received an email concerning that we need some invoices, the receipts for check 5219. So this might bring you back into the picture,
Yeah, I
Michael,
guess
we're
it
have to
does.
ask you, okay? For James Lutz, who's James Lutz?
The lawyer.
The lawyer,
Okay.
yeah.
And then
I
we
have
have check
those too.
concerns, voided check concerns, and did Karen have a contract at any time?
No.
Yeah, Karen, I don't, probably way back, maybe.
No.
Okay,
No, it's just,
so that was the question, copy of the contract agreement, we might have to get something from Karen, so.
we can send the invoices, they have, she's a contractor, she's not.
But they're
yeah.
requiring a contract from,
They're requiring it?
well, it says copy, outstanding irons, copy of contractor agreement,
no,
the
no, I think that's-
scope of work for Karen.
Yeah,
So we'll put
I'll
this-
follow up with it.
Okay. No treasure report.
Was the issue of the discrepancy with the last quarterly report addressed?
No, that was not part of the email. Nope. Okay, so this is just a check for Karen.
Yep, approval expenses, I'd like to make a motion that ANC 6E approve a $250 payment to Karen Yela for the minutes that she will compose for this meeting, as well as maintenance of our website.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have a couple minutes for the getting community messages. Make it bullet points.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Michaela Farrell, one of the Ward 6 liaisons in Mayor Bowser's Office of Community Relations and Services. I have a few announcements. First, the Mayor's Office of the Clean City will be hosting a roll-off day this coming Saturday, February 8th, from 12 until 2 in the 1500 block of 10th Street near Seton Elementary. So if you're doing some spring cleaning, I know it's already nice out and you might be doing some spring cleaning, bring your bulk items to the dumpster in the 1500 block of 10th Street. We're also accepting electronics. So I have flyers in the back. That's on Saturday. Additionally, the mayor's office, as well as DOES, Department of Employment Services, and the Wider Circle are hosting a summer youth employment program application and informational session on February 14th from 12 to 4 p.m. We heard from residents at the fall crime meetings in the fall that employment was the thing that they wanted to see a bigger push on, and so we're targeting those young adults. You can be 14 to 24 to apply, but those young adults who are in the neighborhood during the day. And that will be at the Wider Circle's offices on February 14th from 12 to 4. Wider Circle is 1726 7th Street. The employment program, or the summer employment programs applications are live and are open until February 29th if you know a youth that's interested. And then one last thing from me, we are currently in budget season, and Mayor Bowser and her administration has several opportunities for you to weigh in on the budget. We have a budget engagement forums where you can come and share your ideas, your values, what you want to see in the budget as we are preparing to send it to council. There are 3 dates for those budget engagement forums. The first is February 18th, 6:30 at Edgewood Rec Center, which is in Ward 5. February 20th at 6:30 p.m. at UDC's Student Center, that's in Ward 3. And February 22nd at 11 a.m. at Kenilworth Rec Center, and that's in Ward 7. I hope to see if you all are interested in wanting to learn more about the budget process, share your ideas of what should be included in the budget. Please join us.
Okay, Naomi, do you have anything?
Just a quick one. We started up office hours again
Okay, great.
this Friday. Commerce Coffee. Hope to see most of you there.
At
Great.
15 35 7th
Everybody
Street
knows
Northwest.
the
Again,
Compass Coffee.
there are 2 Compass Coffees on 7th Street
Oh,
now.
I didn't. Close this one.
Yeah, there's
My
one at
area.
1023 7th.
Oh,
Oh.
okay, great, thank you, Naomi, all right.
I have one announcement.
Okay, go.
There will be a Black History Month event on Saturday, the 22nd of February at 3 p.m. at New Bethel Baptist Church. It's going to be entitled Eyewitness to History. It's going to be an interview with a former DC delegate, Reverend Walter Fauntroy, who was an aide to Martin Luther King Jr., was involved in home rule, hosted Robert Kennedy and his wife in the days after the 1968 riots, was involved in anti-apartheid movements and protests, and in half a century of events in the neighborhood. It's free of charge to attend, and it will be at New Bethel Baptist Church at 1739 9th Street Northwest.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 3rd here. Okay, great, thanks everyone for coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't tell that fellow librarian.
What's up, buddy? I'm hanging in there. How about yourself?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Doing good.
How's the family?
Doing well.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You sleeping?
I am sleeping, yeah. Although she's bringing home colds from daycare.
Oh, God.
Yeah, like crazy. But yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're